Film Go family, what's up, man? Listen, today we gonna take you through a tutorial of how to color grade in DaVinci Resolve. And we're gonna go for the traditional teal and orange look just because it's kind of industry standard to get that cinematic feel and that cinematic look. I'm gonna make this as brief as possible. We're just gonna get you through the basics and you can build from here. So we're gonna color grade in DaVinci Resolve today, and it uses a system called nodes. And the way that nodes work, nodes kind of work like layers, but it's kind of like a chain system. You see this green tab here? That's the input of the video. Whatever you do to the node, it will affect the input of the video. If you add another node, it will affect the previous node and the overall image. And from this node, it links to the output. So this is what you actually see on the screen, is what comes from here. All right, so let's delete that and let's go back to one node. So ultimately, we shot this on a Blackmagic Pocket 6K camera, and we shot in film, so it's a flat profile. The main thing with color grading, I want you to think of it as I need to create separation. So that's the main focus when you're color grading, whether by contrast or colors, etc. Create separation. Separate the talent from the background, which will create you an awesome image almost every time. All right, so the most important thing before you start color grading is making sure you have a proper white balance and proper exposure when you actually filmed it. If you did not, you want to make sure that you do a basic color correction on the image before you start the actual color grade. So I'm just going to give you a quick example. So let's say that, fortunately, we did grab this in the proper white balance and proper exposure. So I'm going to come to my raw settings. We shot this in raw. I'm just giving you a quick example. Let's say that I grabbed this, the temperature way too cool. All right. And let's say I was overexposed. Okay, we're just going to assume that this is what happened. So what I want to do is do a quick basic color correction, and I want to make sure that my white balance is proper. And the way that I check that, we work with video scopes to help us do that. So come to this workspace tab at the top, click video scopes, turn those on. And as you can see, this parade, which is ultimately, this really helps me with my exposure and my different colors and if it's properly balanced or not. This is the red channel, green channel, and blue channel. And our goal is to make sure that we get this as close to even as possible, and then you'll know you're properly white balanced. So now we're a little bit overexposed. So let's kind of bring the overall, let's offset the exposure, bring that down some. Okay, now let's get the colors a little bit more balanced. So as I can see, I have a lot more blues and greens in my image than red. So what I want to do is come to the gain, and I actually want to push away from blue, add a little more red. And what I want to do is make sure that we get that top level of that parade as close to even as possible. So now it's kind of even. As you can see, the image is starting to look a little bit more natural. Now the bottom, we want to get that even as well. So we'll come to my shadows or my lift, and what I need to do actually is add a little bit more red in my shadows and take a little bit of blue away. So again, we want to push away from the blue and lift up the reds in the shadows until we get that bottom somewhat even. So now that was my quick version of a basic color correction, assuming that we shot it with the wrong white balance and the wrong exposure. So it went from this to this. Now it looks a lot more natural. Now we can start the color grade. All right, so I'm actually going to erase this, and I'm going to go back to my raw settings and put it back to how we actually captured the image, and we'll start our color grade from here. So that was just a quick rundown of a basic color correction. All right, first thing we want to do, hit Option S to add a new node. Or if you don't want to do that option, which I highly recommend you learn your quick click keys, you can right click it, add node, add serial node. Okay, and that's how you add nodes. Now for the first node, we actually don't want to do anything to this. All right, we'll come back to that. in a little while, and I'll show you why. So let's add an additional node. So this is the first one we're actually going to do some adjustments on. So right click, click node label, and let's label the nodes. You want to stay organized when you're working so it's easy to toggle things on and off and see what you did prior. We're going to name this contrast. All right, so adding contrast always starts to get your image looking to a decent area. All right, so first thing we want to do, let me pull my video scopes back up. All right, I always keep those up. All right, so I want to add a little bit of gain in my image. All right, and it's kind of a back and forth thing that you want to do. All right, and I want to drop my shadows on my lift down a little bit. Ultimately, what we're doing is creating separation. As you see me pull these up and down, you see this wave form or this parade start to kind of spread out. The key thing is we want to make sure that our shadows don't drop below 0 and our highlights don't go above 1,000 or 100 in other softwares, because anything below 0 and above this top line, you will lose information. So we want to try to stay as balanced as possible as we work on this, but just start to create the separation. Again, the key thing is you want to do minor adjustments, all right? Not real heavy adjustments, just minor adjustments. And you can toggle this on and off by clicking this little corner, the left corner, all right, to kind of see what you did and your progress so far. I highly recommend doing that so you can see the changes that you made as you work, all right? So I'm starting to like that. It's starting to add a little bit, give it a little bit more real feel. You can come down to this bottom tab here, okay? You see these, 1 and 2. Click number 1 and just add a little bit more contrast to it, all right, to taste. It's totally up to you. Color grading is subjective to the creator, all right? So I like my images, most of my videos are a little contrasty, so I like contrast a lot. All right, so that's what we've done so far. All right, so each time you make a different type of adjustment, you want to add a new node. All right, that way, if you just want to do, once you make the changes and you just want to affect the contrast, you can come straight to that node and only affect that. Or if you just want to affect saturation, you could come to that node and only change those settings. So this one, we're actually going to name it saturation. All right, and as you make, so now let's go ahead and add some saturation to this image. We don't want to overdo it. I'll probably boost mine up to about 75 just to add some color in our skin tones and the surrounding area. And as you can see, the adjustments that was made here. Now what we want to do, once we add the amount of saturation to taste, we want to go ahead and start adding the look a little bit. So not too much, just a little bit. I want the shot to be a little warm, so I'm going to warm up the image a little bit in my gain. All right, I'm going to add a little bit of orange. Then I'm going to counter that with some teal in my shadows. Okay, so we start to create the look somewhat and start to create that separation. All right, starting to look pretty good. I'm actually going to add a little bit more saturation. Let's boost that up to about 85. All right, and as you can see, the difference that's made is already looking a whole lot better than beginning. And this little button here, you toggle that on and off. All right, you can see where it started to everything that you did up to that point. So now let's add another node, Option S. All right, I'm going to add, this node is going to be called Curves. All right, so what we want to do, again, create a little bit more separation. I want to add a slight S curve. So you need 2 points on the curves down here at the bottom. This is the tab here. 2 points on the curve. All right, you want to find a sweet spot in the shadows is probably the most important. So when I drag this down, I don't want to bring the light down on her face. See, I'm up here, it's bringing the light down on her face. I want to come down a little bit lower and only affect the darker areas of the image. As you can see, I'm affecting mainly like her hair and the chairs and the glasses and things like that, and just kind of pull that down some. And then I want to come to my highlight, find the sweet spot with that, and just kind of boost that up some. All right, and it just create a little bit more separation. Toggle that on and off, and a slight difference. Subtle changes makes all the world of difference. All right, so now let's add another layer. All right, we're going to name this one Teal. All right, we're not going to do anything to this one yet, though. But what we want to do now is hit Option L. which is adding a layer node. It kind of combines these two nodes together and they act as one node. All right, or if you don't want to do that, you can just right click it, go to add node, add layer. All right, so now let's label this node as skin tones. Okay, so now what we want to do, we actually want to adjust the skin tones before we adjust the teal. So let's go highlight, let's hit this little magic button here. You see this magic button? Hit that before you do anything to this particular node. And then you want to come down here to this qualifier tab. We want to qualify the skin tones. What that's going to do, it's going to just select a certain color for us. So we want to select, let's zoom in a little bit so we can see a little bit more detail. We want to select the skin tones. Usually the forehead is the best place to grab the skin tones. All right, because it has the most light on it most of the time. All right, and as you can see, I've qualified the skin tones. So I've grabbed the skin tones almost just by itself. All right, if I toggle this on and off, that's why we hit this magic button up here so we can just see exactly what we're working on. And now we want to make some minor adjustments to it. The more you mess around with these, the more used to it you'll get and understand how they work. But make you some minor adjustments to just make sure you're only grabbing what you want to grab. All right, you can clean it up over here somewhat. All right, blur it out some. All right, and as you can see, I still got a little noise in my image. All right, so now what we want to do is actually come back to this first node. All right, we can undo the magic stick. Come back to this first node. As you can see, there's digital noise in the skin tone. So we want to remove that. So let's come down here to this tab. All right, this is the noise reduction tab. I usually do about 2 or 3, and then I click better. All right, those are usually my settings for this. I usually keep it on medium and then keep these linked, and I just want to do a slight adjustment. The key is to not overdo it. All right, as you can see, it's already looking a whole lot better and cleaning up that digital noise. All right, so next what I want to do is come over here to this one, and I want to unlink it and just pull up my chroma denoiser just a little bit. Again, slight adjustments, nothing major. Everything needs to be done at a minimal. All right, so let's look at the before and after so far. Looking good, looking good. So you have the skin tones. Let's zoom back in, click the magic stick again. As you can see, it kind of helped cleaned up a lot of that noise that was in the skin tone grab. All right, and we can look over here at the vector scope. This is the skin tone line. As you can see, we're a little bit off of it, but it doesn't have to be exactly on the line. You just want to get it in the general area. If you can keep it in the general area, then you know you're good. But I am going to add just maybe a little bit of magenta to the skin tones, just to kind of bring it a little closer to that. So what I want to do is I actually want to come down to my primary wheels, and I go straight to my gamma or my midtones, just kind of pull up towards magenta and red. All right, and then I also add just a little bit of my shadows too. All right, and what that's going to do is just give it a little bit more red in the skin tone, to give it a little bit more blood in their face, so it makes it look a little more natural. So as I toggle that on and off, you can see it's just a slight adjustment, very slight adjustment, but it makes the skin tones look a little bit more natural. Now what I want to do next with the skin tones, her skin is actually already very smooth, so it actually looks great. Generally, I probably wouldn't do too much more to smooth out the skin tones, but let's assume that her skin tones aren't that smooth, but it never hurts for a female anyways. Females are always like, they always look best with smooth skin. So what you want to do, you want to click the skin tones tab again, and make sure we don't have this toggled on right now. Make sure that that's off, and you want to come down here to the bottom, all right, and you want to click number 2, and they got this thing called mid-tone detail. I'm gonna crank this all the way up, and you're gonna see the difference, but we actually not gonna use it that way. We actually want to pull it down. But when I crank it up, it adds more detail to the face. We don't really want to do that for females. We really want to bring it down some to help smooth out the skin. Usually about 20, 21 is my sweet spot. All right, and it just kind of helps smooth everything out. All right, so let's go 0, 21. All right, it just kind of really helps smooth out the skin somewhat. So now we're done with the skin tones. I got it looking natural. The image is already looking a lot better than what we started. So that's the image in the beginning. This is where we at now. So now let's start adding the teal. Let's go back to this tab here that we labeled earlier as teal. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to label this. Let's go ahead and label this first node as the first node as noise reduction. Uh-oh. All right. Let's go back to this teal tab. Okay, go to your curves tab. So now what you want to do, you want to unlink it and click the red channels. So now we're going for the teal and orange look. So what we want to do is we want to pull some red out of the highlights. All right, and it'll start to get a teal look. And as you can see over here, you'll start seeing this entire vector scope shift over towards teal as we move it. All right, so what we're doing ultimately is creating separation. And as I'm gonna go way crazy with this real quick, but I'm not gonna leave it like this. See, the skin tones are not really being affected as much. They're still in orange, and that's because we have them qualified in the layer node after. All right, that's why the layer node is important. So as I adjust this first node prior to that layer node, it's not affecting my skin tones. We want to keep our skin tones as natural as possible. So I'm pulling down in the highlights, adding a little teal to the highlights. We don't want to overdo it, but do it just enough. And also let me pull it a little bit more in my shadows, just a little bit. All right, start to create that separation. As I toggle this on and off, you can see the difference. Again, slight adjustments. We don't want to overdo it. Slight adjustments. I can't emphasize that enough. So now we're starting to get to the look that we want. All right, the teal and orange look, skin tones looking good and buttery. The scene is looking good, it's lit properly. So now, again, what we want to do next is create more separation. Let's create some more separation. So let's make sure that you have this layer piece highlighted and add another node from there, Option S. So now what we want to do, come down here to this window. It's a mask, right? This window, let's add a mask, add a circle mask. Put it over the general area that she's going to be in. All right. All right. And don't be afraid to kind of have it wide. And make sure you add a lot of feather. Feather it all the way out. All right. Because we don't want it to be, we don't want to have an image that looks like we did something to it. The goal is to make sure we just add enough adjustments to separate her without looking like we overdid it. All right. So once you feather that all the way out, stay on that tab, feather that all the way out. You want to add something called an outside node. So you can hit Option O, and that adds an outside node. Or you can right click, add node, add outside. But quick, again, Option O. Let's go ahead and label these nodes. This node, we'll call it inside mask. And this node, we'll call it outside mask. And ultimately, these two act as one node together too. But however, the mask that you added, this first node is going to affect what's inside the mask. The second node is going to affect the outside mask. And we just want to create a slight vignette around here. So what we're going to do is actually come down to the curves, click the middle of the curve, and just slightly pull that down. Not too much, but just till you start seeing a difference, and then do it to taste. All right, so let's toggle that on and off. See the difference? Zoom in a little bit so you can see a little bit more of what I did. Let's toggle that on and off. All right, so what it's doing is drawing more attention towards the talent. All right, we're starting to look really good. Toggle the whole entire image on and off. Looks really good. All right. So now let's add another node after the outside mask. All right. And we're going to call this node Cleanup. So what I want to do to this, I want to make sure that my blacks are truly black. All right. As you can see in the scope over here, the parade, if you look at the bottom, all right, the way you know it's truly black, if the blacks are truly blacks, if the bottom of these are even. But as you can see, there's more blue and green in my blacks. That's because I added the teal, which is fine. If you want to keep this look, by all means, go for it because it looks great. However, I like to get down to the nitty gritty and make some really small adjustments to really make my video pop a little more and just give it more of a natural feel. That's what this tab over here is for. It's called log. All right, you have these 3 different tabs. All right, if you come to the first one, that's the one you're gonna do most of your adjustments in. If you come to this log, this is where you make the minor adjustments that really make a difference. All right. So what I want to do is come over here and get these as even as possible. I want to come to my shadows and I want to adjust my shadows. And I'm going to move this around until I get those 3 colors as even as possible. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, so now if I look in her hair, if I toggle this on and off, you can see the difference that it made. Now, I do want it to have a little bit more teal than that, than the adjustment I made. I made my blacks truly black, but it kind of took away some of my teal in the shadows. So what I want to do is come over here to the bottom where you see 1 and 2, make sure it's on 1, and click the low range, all right? And I want to drag it over to my left somewhat. And all this is doing ultimately is making sure that I'm more so focused on, it's focusing what blacks I'm affecting, the darker blacks. The more I drag it to the left, the more it's focused on the darker blacks. The more I drag it to the right, the more it's focused on the brighter blacks. So I want to drag it to the left and focus it more on the darker blacks, like the real dark images of her hair. So this, the more of the brighter areas of her hair are still kind of have that teal looking teal feel. So as you can see, I dragged it over. And as I toggle this on and off, you should barely be able to see a change now, but it's mainly in the dark areas. See that slight adjustment. All right, let's zoom back out and look how buttery that looks. All right, let me add my adjustment. See, you can barely tell, and that's the key, slight adjustments. Now we have a nice teal and orange looking image. Let's toggle on and off. All right, we're gonna do one more thing, all right? And we're gonna name this one, let's add this node. Let's name this node Detail, all right? So now what we wanna do is just add just a little bit more sharpness to the detail. You wanna come to this tab over here, it's called Blur. Come to the radius, just drag it down to about 48 or 47. Those are usually my sweet spots. And if I zoom in and I toggle this on and off, you can see the difference. It added a little bit more detail to the edges of like her eyes and lips and glasses. Just kind of give it a little bit more pop to the image. All right, and that's it. That's my color grading tutorial. Let's toggle this on and off again. And as you can see, it made a world of difference. And that's it, y'all. The teal and orange look, DaVinci Resolve. Film GOAT. And always remember, love God, love people, and stay creative. I'm out.